Hey, and welcome back to Thanks Universe, where I'm going to share my lessons learned as I am growing my small business. So, I'm actually going to combine week 6 and week 7 for this quarter. And the reason I didn't record week six's podcast at week 6 is because I felt like it was just complaints. Week 6 was a bit of a hard week and it just a little bit tough. And I had more lessons in identifying pain points, more so than finding solutions or taking actions towards growth. It was mainly just trying to stay afloat and identifying all the things that were causing me pain in the business. So I'll share a few of those with you now because I have gotten the opportunity this week to make some progress on these things. So, last week I was struggling with training. It was hard to find time to train my people. I felt like I'm letting them down. And building out the training material is different than actually spending time doing the training. So finding time for both in the schedule while still like moving things along was really difficult. And a lot of what I was doing was admin tasks. And I've tried VAs. Everyone says get a VA, $4, $15. If you train them right, they will do the work well. And I have tried everyone from like $4 to $15 to $50. And there's just a difference between the $4 and the $50. If you yourself are not the best trainer on admin tasks, it's hard to then train someone to do those tasks. It's not impossible, but it was just admin tasks were taking up a lot of my time. And little things, important things, but things that just added to my calendar, small asks from the team that would be like very innocent and very reasonable, would then add like 2-3 hours of work to my calendar. And this is outside of the focus work that I need to do and the just day-to-day running of things. So that last week, and I'm going to finish up there because, as I mentioned, it was just a hard week and very just pain points driven, not many lessons there. Unless you count the fact that I like hardcore time audited myself this week in week 7, where I found out, well, there was one special thing about week 7. We had a ongoing site projects happening. So I was on site and in the warehouse and doing implementation for about 40%, 40 to 50% of my week. So that skewed the results a lot. But I still worked really hard to identify all the small tasks that was going in. And it turns out, and then categorizing them by like what category they fall in, creating opportunity, meetings, prioritization, training and feedback, admin tasks. And it turns out 30% of my calendar, roughly, if I look at the last 7 weeks, 20 to 30% of my calendar is usually admin tasks, which doesn't really make the company a lot of money, but is important in order for the company to continue legally moving forward. you know? So this week I decided to figure out who my next hire is and who that person I need to bring on the team is to just exponentially push us forward, and what I'm going to do with the extra 30% of space on my calendar. Because I can offload the 30%, sure, but then what am I going to do to then take our company even further forward? The point is not just to get it off my calendar and then not think about anything, it's to replace it. So those were the two main questions that I was figuring out this week, and that's where a lot of my lessons learned comes from this week. Okay, so some of the questions I was working on was, one, who to hire long-term versus short-term. I wasn't sure if I needed a long-term hire or a short-term hire for the warehouse. Like I said, I spent 50% of my week there, and as long as I was there pointing the way to go, it can be done with short-term hires. Now, the long-term hire would be the person who's standing there pointing out what needs to be done, right? So there are two actually separate roles, even within that one thing that I was doing all by myself. And then there is the actual logistics control of scheduling contractors, making sure things arrive on site, making sure the packing slip matches the customer's order, and all those small logistical attention to detail things that needed to get done, right? And then there is connecting sales, product, and implementation. So there were quite a few three-way calls between the sales rep, myself in implementation at the warehouse, and the product team to make sure the customer's desires, what we have in the warehouse, and the actual product design all match each other, and we can serve the customer in a way that makes them happy. And if the customer has specific requirements that weren't clearly communicated, to like go back and be like, hey, these are based on the product design and availability in the warehouse, 3 different options that might suit the client. So sales team, please go see which one they want. So figuring out that communication cycle has not been done yet, but it is on my list because of just the sheer number of three-way calls we had to do to make sure everyone was on the same page. So that is something that's been highlighted to me to, 1, fix communication cadence, and 2, to figure out how I can have more just visibility within the company so there doesn't have to be as many conversations to solve this problem. Another thing that I wanted to do that involved personnel is we just did this beautiful site. I want content of it so that I can put it on my website and maybe even do other things related to social media with it. So I called a couple photographers, and for like 2 days of filming and 2 3-minute clips, it's coming out to $4,500, at which point I can just hire someone full-time to travel to sites, take the videos I need, and then upload them to the website, do all the edits, and then schedule them for social media. So now that I know that to get something that professional level, I can just hire one person and get it done in-house. Now I just have to wait till I have the budget to bring someone on full-time, and they can handle that. In the meantime, we'll get smaller projects done, and not pay the $4,500 for 2 full days of recording, but just record the projects once they're finished. So give and take, making what can work now, and preparing for what's to come later. What I did next is to take all the information from my calendar, where I had written every line item of everything I had done that week, and taking it and putting it into a job description. So I had the general job description, which said loading and unloading the truck, et cetera, or office admin tasks. And I was able to use my calendar to then go into the job descriptions that I had already set that gave the overview, and write out example of a week here and like what tasks you'll do. So I was able to be like, Monday I did these tasks, it took this much time of mine, and Tuesday, and just put out a whole week and kind of what it involved. That way anyone who's reading the job description can get a real feel of like what a hectic week might look like for them. So those were my lessons learned this week about finding the right who, putting together an effective job description, knowing what is on my calendar and what is the most important thing I need to offload, and then what I can do with my extra time. So I hope there are some lessons you can take away and apply for your own business growth in this, and I will see you next week at Thanks Universe.